Morning, girls. Welcome back to our second revision class for software engineering. Okay, in the previous session, we had ended with 5 generic framework activities, and we had also seen this classification of process models. So, as already you know, that process models are classified into 3 types. The first one is prescriptive, specialized, and unified model. Now, in this session, let us revise all these process models. So, let us first start with the basic process model, that is a prescriptive process models. So here why the name is given as prescriptive process model means this model prescribes a set of activities, actions, tasks, quality assurance mechanisms and change control mechanisms for each project. So that means it will provide a set of activities, a set of rules, a set of quality assurance mechanisms, a set of change control mechanisms that can be used in order to develop a good quality software product. So hence it is given the name prescriptive process models. Okay, and then in the last session we already seen that depending on how the activities are moving from one activity to other activity, that is how the control or how the process flow is taking place between the activities, these process flows are classified into 4 types, that is linear or sequential process flow, incremental process flow, evolutionary process flow and parallel process flow. So, coming to the prescriptive process models classification. So, among the various prescriptive process models, the waterfall model, V model, and iterative waterfall model falls under linear or sequential process flow. Incremental process model and the RAD model, that is incremental model and RAD model, falls under incremental process flow. So here RAD stands for rapid application development. Okay, next the prototype model and the spiral model falls under evolutionary process flow, and the last one concurrent development model, it follows the parallel process flow. Okay, now let us begin with the basic process model, that is the waterfall model. So this is the very first model that has been developed by the software developers, and this is the main root cause for the development of various software process models. So this model is also called as linear sequential lifecycle model. Why? Because it suggests a systematic sequential approach to software development. Sequential approach to the software development that begins with customer specification of requirements and progresses through planning, modeling, construction and deployment. So here you can see the waterfall model diagram. So here we are representing the waterfall model diagram with the help of 5 framework activities, that is communication, planning, modeling, construction and deployment. So if you observe this diagram, here all the activities are taking place in a sequential manner. So once the communication is done, then only we can move to the planning. Once the planning is done, then only we can move to the modeling. Once the modeling is done, then only we can move to the construction. Once the construction is done, then only we can move to the deployment. Now let us see what we are doing in the communication. So in the communication activity, during communication activity, the project initiation and requirement gathering is taking place. Project initiation, in the sense, we try to determine whether it would be financially, technically feasible to develop a software. That means we, before we start with any kind of project, we just check what are the constraints that we need to fulfill, what kind of requirements we do we need in order to develop any kind of software project, or what kind of projects we can develop. Okay, so the answers to all these questions are done during project initiation. Okay, so once the project initiation is done, that is once we got a good knowledge of what to be developed and how to be developed, then we go with the next activity, that is requirements gathering. During requirements gathering, we collect various requirements from various customers and stakeholders. So that means we just communicate with the customers and we ask them what are the various requirements they are in need. Okay, then we document the same. So that is done in the requirements gathering. So once the requirements gathering is done, then we move to the next activity, that is planning. During planning, the estimation of cost, the estimation of time, effort is done, and then the a neat plan of how the process flow has to be taken place. That is how orderly the activities has to take place. That is also done during planning. That means we prepare a schedule of how to perform various activities, and at the same time we try to provide some mechanisms in order to control and monitor this flow of activities, that is the progress of software development. So that's nothing but the tracking. So during planning, estimation, scheduling and tracking is done. So once we are ready with a schedule, then we move to the modeling. So during modeling, analysis and design takes place. So what kind of analysis is done means, so already we had gathered requirements in the communication, right? In the communication activity we had gathered the requirements. Okay, now we try to understand those requirements. That is, we are performing a kind of analysis. Okay, so once we understood those requirements, then we go for the designing. So during designing, what actually we do means, first we identify what are the major requirements of the customers. Now these requirements are divided into sub requirements. In programmatical terminology, we can say a problem is now divided into sub problems. So now we had identified a problem and its division into sub problems. Okay, so that can be termed as a module and a division of modules into sub modules. Okay, so once the module identification is done, then we try to identify what is the relation between among those various modules. That means finally, once we got the call relationships between these modules, we generate a kind of hierarchical tree structure that can be termed as a structure chart. Okay, so that means we simply represent, first we identify what are the modules and then we represent the call relationship between these modules in the form of a tree like structure, and that tree like structure is called as a structure chart. Okay, so once this module classification and calls between modules is done, then at the end of the design, a sub activity called detailed design is done. So during detailed design, for each and every module, we generate algorithms. What is an algorithm? It simply represents a step-by-step procedure that are to be followed while implementing it. Okay, so that algorithms are generated at the end of the design phase. So whenever we completed this modeling, we are ready with some designs. So at this modeling phase, we are ready with some designs, and we are also having some algorithms with us. Okay, so once this modeling is completed, then we move to the next phase, that is construction. So during construction, the coding and testing is done. So to what we write the code, in what kind of coding is done, what kind of programs we write, the answer to that is given by the algorithms that are generated in the previous activity, that is modeling. Okay, so now the algorithms which are generated in the previous phase are implemented using any programming language. That means we write some set of programs. Okay, so now the code for each and every module is generated in the coding activity. Okay, modules, the code for each and every module is done in the coding activity. So once the coding is done, coding part is completed, then we go for testing. So during testing, we check whether that program is having any errors or not, and we also check whether it is fulfilling the customer requirement or not. Okay, so that kind of testing is done in the construction phase. So once we finish with the construction, then we go with the deployment. In the deployment, the delivery, support and feedback takes place. So that's nothing but we deliver our product to the customer. Now the customer will use our product, that is he supports to our product, and after using that he provides certain feedback to us. So based on which we can update our software. Okay, so this is the last activity that is performed in the waterfall model. So this is a kind of schematic representation of the waterfall model. We can even represent this waterfall model in another manner. So this representation provides a more detailed activities that takes place, that is feasibility study, requirement analysis and specification, design, coding and testing, coding and unit testing, integration testing and maintenance. Okay, so coming to the feasibility study. So it's nothing but something like a project initiation. Like here where we generally this stage is to determine whether it would be financially or technically feasible to develop the software, and it also involves several activities such as collection of basic information related to the software, such as what are the different data items that are required in order to input to the system, and in order to process in order to perform certain processing required to be carried out on these data, the output required to be produced by the system, as well as various constraints on the development. Okay, so that means in the feasibility study we determine whether it is financially and technically feasible to develop the software, and we also collect some basic information related to the input and output data items and the processing, and what are the various constraints that are to be taken place while development. Okay, so once this feasibility study is completed, then we go to the next activity, that is requirement analysis and specification. During requirement analysis and specification, two sub activities takes place. One is requirements gathering and analysis, and the other is requirement specification. During requirements gathering and analysis, we try to collect all the relevant information regarding the software to be developed from the customer. That means we try to collect various requirements from various customers and stakeholders, and then we try to clearly understand those requirements. That's nothing but the requirement analysis. So once we gathered and analyzed the requirements, then we go for the requirement specification. So during requirement specification, whatever the requirements we had identified and understood, those requirements are documented, and that document is now termed as SRS document, that is software requirement specification document. So that means at the end of this requirement analysis and specification, we got the SRS report. Okay, so once the SRS report is generated, then we go for the design, where we develop the modules and algorithms to those modules, and once the design is completed, then we go for the coding and unit testing. So whatever the modules that are identified in this design, for those modules we write the piece of code, and then on each and every module, that is, now for each and every module a piece of code is there, that is, let us consider some set of programs are there. Okay, now each and every program is tested individually. That testing is called as unit testing. Okay, so once the unit testing of all the programs, that is of all the modules is done, then we go for the integration and system testing. So during integration and system testing, first we try to integrate the modules, and then we test whether they are integrated properly or not. Why do we require this integration? Why? Because we had divided a main problem into sub problems, and for that sub problems we had got the solution in coding and unit testing phase. Okay, now in order to get the solution for the big problem, that is for the major problem, the sub solutions are to be integrated, and then only we can get the main solution. Okay, so for that purpose we go for integration testing. So once the integration testing is done successfully, then we perform system testing. During system testing, we check whether some non-functional requirements of the customer like reliability, adaptability, usability, quality, performance, okay, all these are can be termed as a non-functional requirements. We just check whether these non-functional requirements are met by our developed product or not. So once this phase is completed successfully, then we go to the next phase, that is maintenance. So during maintenance, we deploy our product to the customer, and now the product is being used by the customer. So whenever the customer is using our software product, a maintenance is required. Why? Because whenever a customer is using our software, that software sometimes may require to be modified because of the reasons like an error has occurred, or because of a removal of any feature, or because of adding any new feature into the existing one. So these are the reasons why we go for the maintenance. Okay, so these are the alternate design representation of the classical waterfall model. So here also all the activities are taking place in the sequential manner. Okay, now let us see our next model, that is iterative waterfall model. Okay, so before we start with the iterative waterfall model, we should know what are the drawbacks in our waterfall model. So the major drawback in the waterfall model is, suppose if you found that an error is there in the SRS report, but it's very late, you are now in the coding and unit testing phase. You are now in the coding and unit testing phase, and you had found that an error has occurred in the SRS report. Now, can you go back? No. Why? Because in the waterfall model, we move to the forward phases itself. We can't go back, that is, we can't iterate back to the preceded phases or preceding activities. Okay, so now what the only thing we can do, you complete coding and unit testing, and then you complete integration and maintenance. So obviously you may fail either during unit testing or integration testing, unit testing or integration testing. Okay, now what happens, again you need to go back to the first activity, and again you need to start from the beginning. Okay, so this is the major drawback. It is a time consuming task. Okay, so in order to overcome that, we are referring to the another model, that is iterative waterfall model. Okay, the main change brought about by iterative waterfall model to the classical waterfall model is in the form of providing feedback paths from every phase to its preceding phase. So now in this iterative waterfall model, what we are doing means, from every phase we are providing a feedback paths to its preceding previous phases. That means, suppose again consider the same situation. We are in the coding and unit testing phase, and we found that an error is there in the SRS report. So now we can move from coding and unit testing phase to the requirement analysis and specification, and we can modify the SRS report, and the same modifications can be reflected in design, and the same modifications can be reflected in the coding part also. So now it's a very time saving task. Why? Because instead of going forward and again going back to the first phase, now what we are doing, just wherever the error has occurred, we are able to move to the preceding phases and then proceed with the modifications. Okay, so this is the main advantage of iterative waterfall model. Okay, so this principle of detecting errors as close to their point of commitment as possible is known as phase containment of errors. That is, these feedback paths are helping us to move back to the preceding phases. So it's nothing but we are able to find out where the error has occurred, which phase the error has occurred. Okay, so that is called as phase containment of errors. Okay, so this is our iterative waterfall model. Next, coming to the another version of the waterfall model, that is a V model. So here the major difference between the classical or iterative and with the V model is here we not only have the development activities, we also have some verification and validation activities which are taking place in parallel to the development activities. Okay, so in this model the verification and validation activities are also carried out throughout the development life cycle, and therefore the chances of bugs in the work products are considerably reduced. So since we are performing verification and validation activities while development activities itself, there will be very less chances of bugs in the sense errors. Okay, now let us see the schematic representation of this V model. So in the V, so here the model is in the form of a V. Okay, so the left side of the V, in the left side of the V, the development activities takes place, and in the right side of the V, the verification activities takes place. That means this is the development phase and this is the verification phase. Okay, so during development phase, along with if you consider requirement analysis and specification, along with requirement analysis and specification, we are doing system test design. We are just designing a system test, that is we are just writing the test cases for system testing. So we are able to do only this system design in this phase. Why? Because here we know only the requirements, and the system test is done in order to check whether the functional and whether the non-functional requirements are met or not, and those non-functional requirements can be known during requirement analysis and specification phase itself. Okay, so here we go for the system design. So once we are done with the requirement analysis and specification, then we go with the design part. So again, this design activity is classified into two types. One is high level design and the other one is detailed design. During high level design, we identify the modules and the correlationship among those modules. Okay, so once that identification is done, that is once we wind up with the high level design, then we can start integration test design. Why? Because this integration testing means what? Just trying to integrate the various modules and check whether they are integrating properly or not. So since we got the modules and call invocations between those modules, now we are able to create test cases for performing integration testing. So integration test design is done during high level design itself. That is, once the high level design is completed, we can go with integration test design, and then we go to the coding phase. So once the coding is done, then we can perform unit test design. We can write the test cases in order to perform unit test. Okay, so now we had completed with the development activities. Now we can go with verification activities. A part of verification activities are done during development activities. That is, a helping hand of these verification activities are done in this development activities itself. Okay, so now coming to this verification phase. So here first we perform unit testing, and on success of unit testing, integration testing is done, and on success of integration testing, system testing is done. Okay, so the purpose of these three different steps of testing during validation phase is to detect defects that arise in the corresponding phases of the software development, requirement analysis and specification, design and coding respectively. Okay, so now whenever we are performing unit testing, so it will try to identify whether there are any errors in the code, and whenever you are performing integration testing, it will try to identify whether there is any error in the high level design, and whenever you are performing system testing, it will try to identify whether there are any errors in the SRS report. Okay, so this relation is represented in the form of the dotted arcs. Okay, so this is all about the V model. Next comes incremental process model. Coming to the incremental process model, so there are many situations in which initial software requirements are reasonably well defined, but the overall scope of the development effort prevents a purely linear process. So that means initially we'll be having a limited set of software requirements. Later, the requirements may vary, or the requirements may move to some higher levels. So in those cases, if we go for the previous models like waterfall model, V model, okay, those models are not useful to us. Okay, so in order to overcome that, we can go with the incremental process model. So this incremental process model, it combines the elements of both linear and parallel process flows. Okay, so here some activities takes place in a linear fashion and some activities takes place in a parallel fashion. Okay, so this life cycle is sometimes referred to as successive versions model. That means here first we develop a small software, then we perform some modifications to it, that is we add some new features to it, and again we release it, that is a newer version will be released. So at each and every increment we are trying to release a new software. Okay, so that's why this model is also called as successive version model. So for example, if you consider this diagram, okay, let us consider first we had developed a module A, okay, and then we had deployed it to the customer. Okay, now the customer is using this one. Later we had done some update to module A, that's nothing but we had integrated module A with module B. So we had added some additional features and again given to the customer for deployment. So now the customer is using it, and again what we had done, again we had added new feature, that means again we had integrated module A and B with module C. Okay, so that means here instead of directly developing this entire module at a time and giving it to the customer, first we are releasing a smaller version of that software. We are releasing a smaller version of that software and deploying it to the customer. So now the customer is using that software, so he feels good that he got the software in very less time. Okay, then later we are trying to perform some updations to that software, we are adding some updates to that software. Okay, so finally a fully loaded software will be developed and delivered to the customer. So that is the main process followed in incremental process model. And in this life cycle model, a fast and simple working system called core product is developed. So first we develop a simple working model. That working model is called as a core product. Then later we add new features to that working model and deliver to the customer. Okay, so over much successive iterations, successive versions are implemented and delivered to the customer until the desired system is realized. So that means until a desired software product is released, these iterations will increase. That is, a successive versions of softwares will be implemented and delivered to the customer until it meets the desired requirement of the customer. Okay, so how this process takes place means, here first the requirements of the software are broken down into several modules or features that can be incrementally constructed and developed. So first we collect the requirements and now we break those requirements into several modules, and whatever the module is given higher priority, that is what is the main feature that is to be satisfied. Okay, first we try to implement that feature. Okay, then later on we include the rest of the features, that is these main features can be considered as a core part of the software, and the additional features may be considered as a non-core features or non-core part of the software. So that means first we work with the core features of the software, and then later we add this non-core features, that is other additional functionalities to that software. Okay, so here each incremental version is usually developed using a iterative waterfall model of the development. That means whenever you are developing a smaller version of a software, okay, at that time you are following iterative waterfall model of the development. That means we are provided with the feedback paths here. Okay, as each successive version of the software is constructed and delivered to the customer feedback is obtained on the delivered version, and these feedbacks are incorporated in the next version. So now we are first we are concentrating on the major functionality of the software, that is we are developing some core product and giving it to the customer. So now the customer may give us some feedback. Suppose if it is not according to his requirement, or if suppose he requires any additional features to be implemented, then he gives the same feedback to us. So based on that, in the next release we can do those reflections, we can do those modifications. Okay, so that is the main advantage of this incremental process model. So this incremental process model, this is the schematic representation of it. So first we gather the requirements from the customer. Okay, so after gathering the requirements, we identify what are the core functions, and then we release the first version. Okay, so this is the first version of the software. So while developing this version 1, the same iterative waterfall model has been used. Iterative waterfall model approach is used. Okay, now by using this version 1, again we started with the rest of the activities, that is design, code, test, deploy. Okay, again after deploying, that means during this deployment, version 2 is released. Okay, now again we are using this version 2, again we go for design, code, test, deploy, and so on. So finally we go for the version n-1. So that means during its previous succession, version n-1 is deployed. Okay, now to that version n-1 software, again we are performing, using that software we are performing the design, code, test, and deployment activities, and finally version n is released. So version n, again we are using version n. So these versions will increase, that is until these versions will be increased in successive manner until the complete requirements of the customer are met. Okay, so finally we develop the software, that is a full software that is deployed to the customer. Okay, so this is the advantage of incremental process model. So here now you can find the major advantages like error reduction and incremental resource deployment. Okay, these are the two advantages of incremental process model. Now coming to the next process model, that is evolutionary process model. So during evolutionary process model, so what we are doing means, so here the software, like a complex systems, evolves over a period of time. During software development process, some of the situations may arise. That is, whenever we are developing any software, we come across certain situations. Those situations are like business and product requirements often change as the development proceeds, making a straight line path to an end product unrealistic. Next, tight market deadlines make completion of a comprehensive software product, but a limited version must be introduced to meet competitive or business pressure. A set of core product or software requirements is well understood, but the details of the product or system extensions have yet to be defined. So these are the various situations we come across whenever we are developing any software process or any software product. Okay, so in these and similar situations, you need a process model that has been explicitly designed to accommodate a product that evolves over time. So that means we are using these evolutionary process models in the situations where a software product evolves continuously in its nature. That means here the software product requires continuous improvements, continuous updations, or continuous modifications in it. Okay, so in that case you can go with this evolutionary process models. So generally these evolutionary process models are iterative in nature. And we are having two common evolutionary process models. They are the prototype model and the spiral model. Coming to the prototype model, so in this prototype model, a small working prototype of the system is developed. Okay, so what is this prototype? Is nothing but it is a toy and crude implementation of a system with limited functional capacities, low reliability or inefficient performance as compared to the actual software. Okay, a prototype is a toy and crude implementation of a system which has limited functional capabilities, low reliability or inefficient performance as compared to the actual software. That means here we are not developing a complete software at a time. First we are just developing a working model of that software. Okay, and what is the process that is followed during this approach is, first we gather the requirements from the customer, then we go for the quick design, that is we simply go for a sample design part, and then we try to build a prototype. So prototype is nothing but a small working model of the product that we are going to develop. Okay, here the software product is not completely developed, just a working model of it is developed. Okay, then later on we are giving it to the customer for evaluation. Now the customer will use that prototype and he will check whether all his requirements are satisfied in that prototype or not. See here we will be not bothering about the non-functional requirements like reliability, quality, performance. Why? Because it is simply a crude version of that software. It is just like a toy version of a software. Okay, so here here the customer mainly concentrates on the main functional requirements itself. If suppose those functional requirements are satisfied, that is if the customer is satisfied with that prototype, that is he provides an acceptance report, and then we can go with the final design. So this quick design is related to the prototype, and this design is related to the software product that we are going to develop finally. Suppose if the customer is not satisfied, then what to do? We go for refining the requirements, that is we change the requirements, whatever the report we had created, that is SRS report. In that report we modify the SRS report using suggestions from the customer. Again we go for the quick design, again we develop the prototype, again we can give it to the customer for evaluation. Okay, so this cycle will iterate until the customer provides a acceptance, that is until the customer accepts the prototype. So this evaluation takes place. So here we are going for the evolutionary process model. Okay, so after acceptance by the customer, again we go for the design, implementation, testing and maintenance activities, and all these rest of the activities are done using iterative waterfall model itself. Okay, so generally in this prototype model, two kinds of development activities are taking place. One is the prototype development and the other one is the iterative development of the software product. Okay, so that is about the prototype model. In this prototype model we are just providing a quick design of the prototype. So in each and every evaluation we are getting the customer feedback, and then we are refining the requirements, and then we are modifying the prototype, again giving to the customer. Okay, this cycle of obtaining customer feedback and modifying the prototype continues until customer approves the prototype. Okay, next coming to the advantages and disadvantages. So here the advantage is, this model is the most appropriate for projects that suffer from technical and requirement risks. A constructed prototype helps overcome these risks. Here technical and requirements risk in the sense, here the changes in the technical issues or the requirements continuously change, that is they evolve in nature. So in that case we can go with the prototype model. So here suppose a customer came with some requirements, and if at all the customer is not able to explain his requirements properly, so obviously what we can do means we can develop a prototype model of that software and give it to the customer, and then now the customer will check that software, and if at all he feels that it is according to his requirement, then we can proceed with the later activities. That is, we can produce we can develop a final version of the software. Okay, so that means where in the situations where the customer is unable to explain his requirements completely, sometimes the customer may not explain the technical issues also. Why? Because he may not be aware of those technical issues. Okay, so in that cases, whenever the customer is not able to explain his requirements properly, in those cases we can go with this prototype model. And one more advantage is it minimizes redesign and redevelopment cost. Okay, since we are taking the customer acceptancy, and based on that acceptancy we are going for the final development of the software product, so it obviously reduces the cost and redesigning. And coming to the drawbacks, this model can increase the cost of development for projects that are routine development work and do not suffer from any significant risk. Suppose if at all development of any software product is not having any kind of risk like requirement risk, then this model is of no use. Okay, this model is effective only when the risks are identified before the development starts. So we need to identify the risk during prototype development itself. That means in this phase itself we need to identify the risk. If at all we started with the iterative development activities, and if at all we identify any kind of risk, then this model is not that much useful. It's not that much effective. Okay, so these are the drawbacks of the prototype model. Now next move to the spiral model. This spiral model is completely different when compared to the rest of the process models. Okay, so if you see the diagram, you can we can justify the title like it's something appearing like a spiral web. It is a spider web. Okay, so hence it is given the name the spiral model. Okay, so in this spiral model, this model is classified into this model is divided into 4 quadrants: quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. So in the quadrant 1, we determine objectives, alternates and constraints. That is, we try to identify what is the objective, whatever the activity we are performing, whether it is requirement analysis or whether it is designing, whether it is coding or testing or deployment. Okay, the major objective of that particular activity is determined in this phase, that is in this quadrant. Coming to the second quadrant, here we try to evaluate alternatives, identify and resolve risks. That means here we try to identify what are the alternate solutions that are available in order to fulfill this objective. In the quadrant 1 we had identified some objectives, right? So now in order to fulfill those objectives, we try to identify any alternate solutions, and those solutions are developed and verified in this third quadrant. Okay, so then we go for, so once the development of this alternate solutions is done, then we go for the fourth quadrant, so where we plan for the next phase. Okay, so this is a spiral model. Okay, so in the spiral model, the main topics or the main points to be considered are: here each loop in the spiral model represents a phase of software development. The exact number of loops in the spiral is not fixed. In the spiral model, prototypes are built at the start of every phase. Each phase of the model is represented as a loop in its diagrammatic representation. Over each loop, one or more features of the product are elaborated and analyzed, and the risks at that point of time are identified and are resolved through prototyping. Based on this, the identified features are implemented. Okay, So that is the spiral model. So as I said you, in the quadrant 1, what we are doing, the objectives are investigated, elaborated and analyzed. Based on this, the risks evolved in meeting the phase objectives are identified. In this quadrant, alternate solutions possible for the phase under consideration are proposed. So here we are just identifying the major objectives. Okay, we are just identifying the major objectives, and then we are trying to provide alternate solutions. Now that solutions are evaluated in the second quadrant. During the second quadrant, alternate solutions are evaluated to select the best possible solution. So that means let us consider we are having some 10 solutions. In the 10 solutions, we had identified one optimal solution in quadrant 2. Okay, so now what we do in quadrant 3, now we go to the quadrant 3 and we try to implement that solution. Okay, so the activities during third quadrant consist of developing and verifying the next level of the software. At the end of the third quadrant, the identified features have been implemented and the next version of the software is available. Coming to the fourth quadrant, so here we plan for the next stage, right? So the activities during the fourth quadrant concern reviewing the results of the stages transferred so far, that is developed version of the software. So these are reviewed with the customer and planning the next iteration of the spiral. We plan with the next iteration of the spiral. So here the radius of the spiral at any point represents the cost incurred in the project so far, and the angular dimension represents the progress made so far. So that means if you see the diagram, so this radius incurred, that is this radius will tell what is the total cost that has been taken place so far, and the angular representation, suppose if you consider this angle, so here the angle is more. Okay, so this angular dimension represents the progress that has been done so far. Okay, these are the two major points to be considered. Okay, the radius indicates the cost and the angular dimension represents the progress. Okay, so that's all about the spiral model. Now let us move to the next process model, that is concurrent development model. The concurrent development model, sometimes called concurrent engineering, where it allows a software team to represent iterative and concurrent elements of any of the process models. So here we represent the activities or states of activities in a concurrent manner. Okay, so this is the diagrammatical representation of the concurrent development process model. So as I said you, here various activities are executed concurrently in the sense like sometimes you may be in the modeling activity, and at the same time you may be in the like construction activity. Okay, so how that can happen means, so generally, for example, let us consider you are in a modeling activity. Okay, so before entering into the modeling activity, you are in a communication activity. Okay, now once the communication activity is done, then you enter from inactive state to the active state in modeling activity. So that means from inactive state you can either directly you can go to the under development state. That means now the modeling activity is in under development. Okay, meanwhile it may move from under development to the under review, and under review to the baseline, and baseline to the done, or under review to the done, or under development to the awaiting changes. So that means now the modeling activity is waiting for some changes. Meanwhile in communication activity you can communicate to the customer, and you can refine your requirements. Okay, so whenever the requirements are modified, so again you can move from, in the modeling activity you can move from awaiting changes state to the under revision state, and from under revision to the under review, and from under review to the baseline, and baseline to the done. Okay, so in this manner you can move from one state to the other state. Okay, the same set of states can also be available in the rest of the framework activities. Okay, so here the modeling activity may be in any one of the state noted at any given time. Similarly, other activities, actions or tasks can be represented in an analogous manner. So here in this diagram we have just represented the modeling activity which may be in any state. In the same way, the other activities may also be in any state. Okay, so hence we can say this is a kind of concurrent development model. Okay, so here all software engineering activities exist concurrently but reside in different states. Okay, they are existing concurrently but they are residing in different states. So for example, early in the project, the communication activity has completed its first iteration and exists in awaiting changes state. That is, the communication is done. That is, we completed the requirements gathering. Okay, so now the communication activity will enter into awaiting changes state. Meanwhile, the modeling activity, which is previously in the inactive state, now makes a transition into the under development state. If, however, the customer indicates the changes in the requirements must be made, now the modeling activity moves from under development state into the awaiting changes state. Now what happens? The communication activity which is in awaiting changes state may move to the under revision state. Okay, so in this manner all the activities, even though will be taking place in a concurrent manner, all the activities may not be in the same state. They will not be in the same state. They will present in the different states. Okay, so that's all about the prescriptive process models. Now coming to the next process model, that is specialized process model. Okay, the specialized process models take on many of the characteristics or one or more of the traditional model. So here these specialized process models extracts the major advantages of various process models and try to develop a new process model. That means whatever the traditional models we had seen so far, or whatever the prescriptive process models we had seen so far, okay, so from those prescriptive process models, these specialized process models have been developed. Okay, so some of the specialized process models are component based development, the formal methods model, and aspect oriented software development. Coming to the component based development, COTS, that is commercial off the shelf software components developed by vendors who offer them as products, can be used when software is to be built. So that means in component based development, what actually we do means, we are not going to develop any new software. Rather, we collect various components of the software, that is various software components. We integrate them, we develop interfaces between them, and finally we develop a new software and deploy it to the customer. It's something like purchasing parts from different companies, assembling them, and finally making some working model of a toy and selling it to the customers. Okay, in the same way here we purchase the software components and we integrate various components in order to develop a new software component. Okay, these components provide targeted functionality with well-defined interfaces that enable the component to be integrated into the software that is to be built. Okay, since already a tested component is being used, we can say we can produce the full functionalities, that is the target functionalities will be very well satisfied. Why? Because all these components are already tested one. Okay, so simply we are reusing them. We are we are working on development of interfaces itself, and we are trying to integrate them itself. Okay, so obviously we can guarantee that it will lead to the good quality software and good reliability software and good performance software. Okay. The component based development model incorporates many of the characteristics of the spiral model. So it has been evolved from the spiral model. The component based development model constructs applications from prepackaged software components. The component based development model leads to software reuse, and reusability provides software engineers with a number of measurable benefits. So as I already said you that we are reusing the existing software components and providing the interfaces between them and producing the new software product. Okay, so that means there is a lot of reusability in component based development. Okay, that is the major advantage of this component based development. So these are the activities which are implemented using a evolutionary approach. Okay. First, the available component based products are researched and evaluated for application domain in question. So that means first we try to analyze what are the features of that software component. That means an already developed software component is there, and we try to analyze to how much extent that software component is now useful to us. Okay, once that analysis is done, once we identify that particular component is useful to the development of our application, then component integration issues are considered. Then we try to consider whether the integration between those analyzed components takes place properly or not. Then we go for the software architecture. Here the software architecture is somewhat different to the designing. Okay, here just we try to design of how to accommodate the components. That is just software architecture related to the integrating design is done here. Okay, so once this integration design is done, then we implement it. That is the components are integrated according to the identified architecture. So according to this architecture, in the next step the components are integrated into the architecture. Then a comprehensive testing is conducted to ensure the software that is to be to ensure that software is working properly or not. Okay, so these are the steps that are these are the activities that are applied in evolutionary approach, that is in the form of evolutionary approach. Okay, next comes the formal method model. So this is again quite different when compared to the previous model. Okay, the formal methods model encompasses a set of activities that leads to formal mathematical specification of computer software. So here see, it will lead to the formal mathematical specification of a computer software. That means here we are not dealing with the simple software. Here we are dealing something with the complex softwares. Okay, we are trying to develop a complex software which leads to the formal mathematical specifications. Okay, formal methods enable us to specify, develop and verify a computer based system by applying a rigorous mathematical notation. The variation on this approach, called clean room software engineering, is currently applied by some software development organizations. So we can see this clean room software engineering during our testing revision schedule. Okay, when formal methods are used during development, they provide a mechanism for eliminating many of the problems that are difficult to overcome using other software engineering paradigms. Why? Because when formal methods are used during development, they provide a mechanism for eliminating many of the problems that are difficult to overcome. Why this means? Here we are developing here we are performing the set of activities which leads to the formal mathematical specification of the computer software. So mathematical specification in the sense we will be having certain kind of proofs. Okay, so using these mathematical notations we can identify what could be the problem, and we can even try to resolve those problems. Okay, ambiguity, incompleteness and inconsistency can be discovered and corrected more easily. This is the major advantage of formal methods model. And coming to the last model, that is aspect oriented software development. So regardless of the software process that is chosen, the builders of complex software invariably implement a set of localized features, functions, and information content. These localized software characteristics are modeled as components. For example, object oriented classes. Okay. So these localized software characteristics are modeled as components and then constructed within the context of a system architecture. As modern computer based systems become more sophisticated, certain concerns like customer required properties or areas of technical interest span the entire architecture. So as modern computer based systems become more sophisticated, certain concerns like customer required properties or the areas of technical interest span the entire architecture. When concerns cut across multiple system functions, features, and information, they are often referred to as cross-cutting concerns. Cross-cutting concerns means whenever a multiple system functions and features and information are required by the customer, then that can be considered as cross-cutting concerns. So here we are not dealing with a single type of requirement. Here different types of requirements must be fulfilled by the software. So these are the various requirements of the customers. For example, a customer may be much bothered about the security, and at the same time he is much bothered to meet all the functional requirements. That software should be more reliable, it should be portable, it should be having high performance, and it should also be capable of providing multi features. Okay, then we can say this is a cross cutting concern. Why? Because it is this requirement is meeting a different is in need of different satisfying various kinds of requirements. Okay, aspectual requirements define these cross-cutting concerns that have an impact across the software architecture. Aspect-oriented software development, often referred to as aspect-oriented programming, is relatively a new software engineering paradigm that provides a process and methodological approach for defining, specifying, and designing and constructing aspects, that is, mechanisms beyond subroutines and inheritance, for localizing the expression of cross-cutting concern. So this model, rather than concentrating on developing a new software product, so it is providing some methodological approach in order to define, specify, design, and constructing aspects in the sense these cross-cutting concerns. Okay, whatever the cross-cutting concerns we had seen so far. So first we according to this model, first we provide a methodological approach for defining, specifying, and designing and constructing these cross-cutting concerns or aspects. So what is the advantage? So what is the main advantage is here is, if suppose you are able to identify the major requirements and you are able to understand it, then that is enough in order to move to the next activities. Okay, so this model is mainly concentrating on identifying the cross-cutting requirements of the customers. Okay, it is providing some method in order to define, specify, design, and constructing aspects. Okay, so define in the sense in order to define the cross-cutting concerns, and then it specifies those cross-cutting concerns, and then it will provide you a design methodology in order to meet those cross-cutting requirements, and finally you construct a software product in order to meet those cross-cutting concerns. Okay, so that is all about the aspect oriented software development. That is the last model of the specialized process model. Now let us move to the third category of process model, that is the unified process model. The unified process is an attempt to draw on the best features and characteristics of the traditional software process model, but characterize them in a way that implements many of the best principles of the agile software development. So it is also somewhat similar to the specialized process model. Just like specialized process model, it is trying to get the best features and characteristics of the traditional process model, but it is trying to implement those features and characteristics in a agile software development. That means agile software development is, it is the latest software process models. Okay. The unified process recognizes the importance of customer communication and streamlined methods for describing the customer views of the system. That means it is much bothering on requirements gathering and analysis and design part. Okay. Sorry. It emphasizes the important role of software architecture and helps the architect focus on right goals such as understandability, reliance to future changes, and reuse. It suggests a process flow that is iterative and incremental, providing the evolutionary feel that is essential in modern software development. So see here, it is following all the three process flows: iterative, even incremental, and even evolutionary. Okay. So the unified process, so this is the representation of the unified process model. Okay. So here we are having the same activities which are evolving in nature. Okay. So first we start with the communication, planning, modeling, construction, deployment, and again we go with the evolution. That is, we try to produce another version of the software. So that means here the increments of a software are released. Okay. Now coming to the phases of this unified process model. So here we are using a different terminology in this unified process model, that is inception, elaboration, construction, transition, and production. See here we had included one more phase, that is nothing but the production, where the software, the new release or the incremental release or a version of the product is being used by the customer. Okay. Now let us see these inception, elaboration, construction, and transition phase. Okay. So coming to the first phase, that is inception. So as you by seeing the diagram itself, you can understand that it is a combination of both communication and planning. So that means communication along with some planning activities are included in the inception phase. So coming to the inception of the unified process encompasses both customer communication and planning activities. By collaborating with stakeholders, business requirements for the software are identified. A rough architecture for the system is proposed and a plan for iterative incremental nature of ensuring the project is developed. That means during inception, first we communicate with various customers and stakeholders, and we try to get the various business requirements, and then we try to design a rough architecture of the system, and then we plan for the iterative incremental nature of the ensuing project that is going to be developed. That is how many increments are to be developed. Okay, that kind of planning is done in the inception phase. Okay, so once the inception is completed, then we go to the elaboration phase. See, the elaboration phase, it contains a part of planning activities and modeling activities. Okay, so it encompasses the communication and modeling activities of the generic process model. Elaboration refines and expands the preliminary use cases that were developed as a part of inception phase and expands the architectural representation. So here in the previous phase, we had given a rough architecture for the system. Okay, so now that rough architecture is elaborated in the elaboration phase. That means now we are concentrating more on the modeling phase. Okay, so that is a complete architectural representation of the software is developed in this elaboration phase. Next phase is construction phase. The construction phase of the UP is identical to the construction activity defined for generic software process. So that means during construction we go for implementation and testing. That is, we go for the coding and testing part. Okay. Using the architectural model as input, the construction phase develops or acquires the software components that will make each use case operational for end users. To accomplish this, requirements and design models that were started during the elaboration phase are completed to reflect the final version of the software increment. Okay, so what we are doing in this construction phase, we are trying to implement the architectural model. Next comes the transition phase. See the way the transition phase is in this diagram. Okay, so here in the transition phase we are having a part of construction and the deployment. Okay, so in construction phase we are just done with the implementation. Okay, after implementation what we do, we go for the testing. Okay, now coming to the transition phase. The transition phase of unified process encompasses the later stages of generic construction activity and the first part of the generic deployment. That is, later stages in the sense some testing stages, and the first part of the generic deployment in the sense the delivery and feedback activity. Here the software is given to the end users for beta testing. So beta testing is a kind of testing. Here what we actually do means we develop a software and we deploy it to some friendly customers. Okay, we actually not deploy it to all the customers but only to the friendly customers. Okay, and now these customers will use that software and they produce some feedback to us. So based on that feedback we go with the next version, we go with the development of the next version of the software. Suppose if this beta testing is successful, that means if these friendly customers had provided a good feedback on our software, then no more new version will be developed. Why? Because it has completely satisfied the customer requirement. So no need to go for the next version. Okay, so there the evaluation will end. Okay, so the software is given to the end user for beta testing and user feedback reports both defects and necessary changes. In addition, software team creates necessary support information like user manuals, troubleshooting guides, installation procedures that are required for the release. At the conclusion of the transition phase, the software increment becomes a usable software release. Okay, coming to the last phase, that is the production phase. The production phase of the unified process coincides with the deployment activity of the generic process. During this phase, the ongoing use of software is monitored, the support for operating environment is provided, and defect reports and requests for changes are submitted and evaluated. So it is something similar to the deployment activity of the generic process. So other than that, here we are also performing an ongoing process of software is use of software is monitored. That is, maintenance is done here. Okay, so during this phase, ongoing use of the software is monitored. The support for operating environment is provided. That is, whatever the additional softwares that are required in order to run our developed software, okay, those additional requirements are provided, and the defect reports and requests for changes are also submitted and evaluated. Suppose if we get any defect reports and if we get any requests for changes, then what happens? Again we start with the inception phase. That is, again a new evaluation will start. Okay, so that's all about the process models, and with this we had ended the revision of our first unit. Okay, so in first unit we had revised the basic definitions of software engineering, nature of web apps, and then we started with generic framework activities, and we also seen umbrella activities. And now in this second revision class we had briefly seen all the process models. Okay, so this is the end of the revision of our first unit. Okay, thank you.